go. Here we are.
All right. So we're back. It's been a couple hours. We are doing part 2 of hexagonal architecture to nullable infrastructure wrappers. And I've got my microphone out this time, so hopefully the audio quality is better. If not, it's Matt's fault. So where were we, Matt? Catch me up.
We'd just done, so there are two like command methods on the adapter that talks to GitHub. There is add user to team and remove user from team. And we just added this sort of what I've been calling observability behavior to this adapter, so that it still really talks to GitHub at the moment, but as it does so, it emits an event to tell anyone who's interested what it has just done. And so we can change our tests, or we've added to our tests to check for those emitted events. And we use this little track changes method to kind of put it into a mode where it's doing that emitting of its actions, and use that little output tracker library that you brought across.
Yeah.
So I think the next thing we were gonna do was, well, there's two bits. One is to actually stub it out, or to nullify it so that it stops calling GitHub. And then the other thing is to look at the sort of state and querying side of this. So, because we've still got two query methods, get members of and has committed since. So we need to be able to kind of set the system up in a way that those methods are going to respond in different ways depending on what the scenario is that we're testing.
Yeah. So yes, and the reason we want to make this nullable, which means nullable just means that we have the option of turning off the communication to the outside world. And the main reason we're doing this is for testing purposes, but it can be useful elsewhere, as we talked about last time. And the reason we need to have the ability to control what's returned by our Git methods is, again, just for testability. So if it's all right with you, you can start following me, and I will write a test, and then we'll see where that goes. Okay. How does that sound?
Sounds great. I'm excited to see what happens.
Yeah. So here we are in OctokitGithub. I'm going to open up the tests for this, and we have adding someone to the team, removing someone from the team, working out if a user has committed recently, and I'm going to add a new context when Git members for team. Just does not have a context, it's just sort of hanging out.
Yeah, it's not got the same level of...
I'm going to fix that just because it bugs me otherwise. Unless you're in there.
No, I like it.
Context. Team members. Okay. And can you remind me how we run tests? Is it npm run test unit, like that?
Yeah.
Okay, so our new context here is, I've never come up with a good name for this context, but I usually call it nullability. Does that work for you?
Sure.
Okay.
So when, just like an aside, and kind of go into what you did on line 104. I'm trying to think who to reference to give credit to for this properly. It was the guys from Quan, Quality Without a Name, from Holland, and Rob Westgeest and his crew did a session once, and they were talking about RSpec in this context because that was the kind of that first library that did this. But these contexts, these nested contexts at the root for a class. It being nice to think about the responsibilities of the object and listing out each of its responsibilities, because that way, if you need to split the class, you can kind of quite easily just lift the responsibilities that you're splitting out and move them into another. So nullability is a nice responsibility, right? It's a thing that it can do.
That's a nice way of thinking about it. You know, I do I use Mocha as my test tool when I program in JavaScript, and it doesn't call it context. It just allows you to have nested describe blocks.
This is Mocha. You can say context or describe.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Although
That's good to know.
really, describe would be a better word to use in this situation because there isn't a context here. The idea of context is you've got some like common setup state.
Yeah. Well, I'm not a big fan, and I noticed that you aren't either, and I appreciate that about the way you've written these tests, or the way you and your group has written these tests. You don't use before each setup, and I used to use them heavily, but I've moved away from it pretty heavily. Probably for the same reason you have, I suspect. It's much nicer to call a setup method than to have this sort of invisible automatic setup that is often not quite right for the situation you're in.
Yeah. You get coupling that then it gets hard to break out of. Yeah,
exactly. So this nullability context is not really at the same. It's not its own responsibility. It's sort of a cross-cutting responsibility, and we could put the nullability in each thing, but I find that I tend to think about nullability as a piece of its, like when I'm thinking about nullability, I want to see all the nullability stuff together. So what I'm going to do here is I want to say that
Whoa.
Are you moving the screen, or
I tried to just move down to see you.
But you know what's happening? I was following you, and you were following me again.
Why does it let us do that?
It's the blind leading the blind, is what it is.
So can we go back to this? I'm following you now, I think.
No. Yeah, you're following me.
Am I?
Anyway, I think what we want to say is that. Is everything okay?
I'm just trying to scroll up so I can see your stuff in the middle of the window, and then it unfollows you as soon as I do that. Anyway, right. Okay. I just can't touch the mouse when I'm following you. Sorry.
You can. There's a trick to it. If you click the link, there's a way to. So if you click it, the little arrow with the faces. And you go down to thing. There's the full sync mode. You want to turn
lines.
That off.
Right. I want to turn that off.
Yes. And that way, and that's how I ended up following you, because when it's not in full sync mode, you do follow the other person, but you get to do your own thing too without.
That's what I like.
Yeah.
And then I'm not going to annoy you by moving your cursor around. So we're now in the right way. Oh no, it's gone again. Left click to follow user. Okay, because I have to stay in the same window as you. Okay.
Yeah,
okay,
and I think you have to have a dashed line underneath.
But now some usability person at JetBrains should be watching this video, because that's
right.
Intuitive. Anyway,
but now I think we have the ability to both type at the same time, CSI style. So we can both work together.
Love it.
Anyway, so what I'm thinking is we eventually want to say that all of these are nullable, can be turned off. But let's start out with add user to team. And what it does is it does not actually add user to team when, nullability does not actually add user to team. Or maybe we call it null instance. The null instance does not actually add user to the team. And so we'll need to get a GitHub client, and I'll say a null client. I'm just going to do it this way. GitHub, OctokitGithub, create null. And so we have to implement that. Which, do you want to ping pong here, or would you like me to just roll with it?
I don't mind. I wouldn't mind to ping pong. You know what I really need to do first of all is I need to put that U in there, because the little green underline is getting on my nerves. Well,
Actually,
so we can do. I can create the method at least. I would quite like to try and do it actually, if it doesn't slow us down too much.
No, yeah, let's do it.
Is it even going to let me?
I've got more time now, so I think you're the one with the time constraint.
Create. So, how How do I get the sort of quick actions? I'll enter, hover it. More actions. No, I want to create the method. That's what I want to do. Create a method, create null. So it should have made as a static method. It has. Let's put it down the bottom, which is a bit weird, but all right. So yeah, what are we going to do here then? Because the constructor expects to get an instance, an OctokIt thing. Can I move the static method to the top so it's near the constructor?
Please do. I always put my constructors together. So yeah.
I would actually normally put it above the constructor if it's a static.
Yeah, that's where I'd put it.
Yeah.
And because JavaScript doesn't have, well, I don't know, maybe TypeScript can do this properly, but in JavaScript, because we don't have proper method overloading and we don't have private constructors, I typically just have a pattern of calling create when I want to create something and create null when I want to create it.
Right. Yeah.
But here we can just have new be. No, we are going to have to do something like that too, because we're going to need to be able to construct this without it doing its normal thing.
Yeah.
But for now, yeah, let's just pass in null and an empty string. It's not going to be happy with that, is it?
I think I thought it might think no, null's not okay as that type. And this is where it starts to get a bit tricky because we're using TypeScript, because it knows that. I mean, we could soften this up. Certainly, like the easiest thing to do would be just to say,
let's just do that temporarily. We're going to fix it, but we'll do that for now.
But it doesn't like the string now. What's going on? Expected one arguments, but got
take the comma off the end of line 17.
No, because we've got two args there. So that's not the problem. Do you see? Taking the comma off the end of line 17, I don't think it's going to fix it. Expected one argument, but got two. So
what is it complaining about?
No, I don't really. I thought that was going to be all right.
Can we
just to say,
we just need to put this in parentheses?
Maybe.
All right. Well, let me do this. Just to get us going. And we'll come back and.
So we've got things happening now, you see, with the compiler where it's now complaining because when we're starting to look at things that come back from that thing, it doesn't know what they are.
We'll make it better, but
so let's do that explicit any there. It's a little bit of friction. This. Is there anything else? I think we've almost got away with it. Does it list problems?
Yeah, there's a problems tab at the bottom.
I don't have one. Okay, but it's building, so that's good. I think we've satisfied the compiler. Right, let's get back on the bus.
Yeah, and then I think once we've done this once, we'll know what the magic incantations are, and in the future it won't be so hard.
Yeah,
but yeah, so satisfying TypeScript is going to be a bit of a pain in the butt, I think. Which is interesting because doing this in JavaScript where you don't have the types isn't a problem. I'm very conservative about adopting new things, especially things that slow down my build. Yeah. So I just use JavaScript for my personal my own projects, but I use a runtime type checker, so I get the same benefits without.
What I think is interesting here is that the reason it's gnarly really is because this is where we're crossing the boundary into other people's stuff. Because OctokIt is made by someone else and we don't own the type and right. So on. So this is where it's a bit gnarly.
Well, that and we're doing it incrementally. Yeah. So we've only implemented part of the solution. But this test should pass now because if you go back to following me, we're creating it and we're not doing anything with it, so it's passing.
Yeah.
And now what I want to say is that if we try to add somebody to a team, which we do that up here. So if I say add users to team, that is currently going to break the code because we're passing in a null.
Yeah, because it's going to try and call OctokIt, and then we'll get a no such property rest of undefined or something.
Yeah. Did that happen?
Yeah. Cannot read properties of null reading rest. Yeah.
Okay. So now what we're going to do is we're going to do some refactoring. So I'm actually going to comment this out. And what we need to do is we need to make OctokitGithub. We need to make the thing that we're getting in, which is what? Yeah, this GitHub thing. We need to make that pluggable.
What do you mean by pluggable?
Might be easier for me to show than to tell, if that's all right. So I'm going to make a new constructor, which is going to be the same as your old constructor.
So they're not going to be private read-only here because that's just special semantics for a constructor. So
okay.
we just just get rid of those two keywords.
Yeah.
Because they're just method arguments now.
And we're just going to return a new OctoKit and org. Sorry, I'm just pausing. I don't think I need to refactor this, actually.
Oh, yeah? Okay.
So what we want to do here is we want to pass, it's already pluggable because you're passing OctokIt in.
Yeah. What kind of thing do you want to plug instead? You want to be able
we're going to plug in a private stub of OctokIt.
Yeah.
And that's going to be the magic that makes this whole thing work.
So the thing that are we still going to be able to call .rest.repos.list for org on this other thing?
That's right.
Right.
So I'm going to make something called null OctokIt. I'm just sort of feeling my way through this.
Yeah, yeah.
And null OctokIt is, for now, I'm just going to toss it down here at the bottom. And that's going to return an object. And it just needs to be just barely enough to satisfy this. So that object needs to have...
It has to have a rest, which has a repos and a teams.
Yeah, let me just paste this in and see what we got. So we're going to need a rest, as you said, a teams, and then get... yeah, rest is going to be an object. Teams is going to be an object. And that's going to have add or update membership for user in org. And that's just not going to do anything.
Yeah.
That's our stub. And now, I think we might have to, we don't have to do anything to make the type checker happy because we've already made it any, and we'll fight with the type checker later.
Yeah.
But now I believe when this is called, nothing will happen.
So why is that hovery?
And I think our test will pass as a result.
Number of arguments expected naught.
Yeah, it passes.
It's still skipped, right? The null instance one.
Oh, is it skipped? Well, yes, it passes, but it still passes. Darn it! I forgot that I skipped that. Yeah.
It'd be nice to just run this one test and not the others.
Would be.
I think. Can I just have a little go at that when we've run the?
Well, we can just do
this
only
one
like
time.
that.
Oh yeah, of course. I always forget about that.
Yeah. I use that constantly. Skip and only are like.
Something I don't like about changing the test, because I've committed it to source control too many times and I've forgotten, and then only 20%.
I did end up writing my own test runner. I got tired of Mocha, and so I wrote my own test runner, but I kept all the Mocha syntax. And my test runner tells me, like, shows everything that's skipped. And I've actually been thinking
you get a big wall of blue.
Yeah, it does. It just shows. It draws underlines for every one that's skipped, because I just do dots and underlines when it's running the test. And I've actually been thinking that in my build, when I do an integration, I'm going to pass in a parameter that says fail when on skips. So it will just make it impossible to integrate when things are skipped. I haven't done that yet. Okay, so we do have this now passing, and it takes way too long to run still, but 4 milliseconds for the actual test.
Yeah, that's
so now I think the same thing. I'm going to say it does not actually remove user from team. And I'll pass that off to you.
Okay. I'm going to plagiarize. No, I suppose I really need the user to be in the team, but it doesn't matter, does it?
It does not. You don't need the user to be in the team, because we're not actually going to do it.
Yeah. And it should really be test contributor team, just to be respectful. And this needs to be async.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so our stub OctokIt doesn't have one of them, so let's add it. Oops.
I like putting the commas at the end of each of them, so that we can add and move them around without any problem in the future.
I'm surprised Pretty is not making us do that.
Okay.
We possibly
so that's it.
In this.
I mean, once you got it down, creating the nullable is really that simple. So what I want to say next is it thinks everything has been committed recently, or has committed since. It's always true. That's not a great test name. You can fix it.
Yeah, so has committed since is about whether the user has made a commit since a given date. So what we want to find out is whether they're due for retirement.
Always made a commit.
Recently.
Yeah, since provided date.
Yeah.
And it's every date. I put that in the wrong spot. So we'll do that there. So yeah, back over to you.
Okay. Whoa. It stopped.
Yeah, I'm not loving this code with me tool. I'm finding it very...
Yeah, it's janky.
Mine is completely locked up.
Yeah, mine too.
Like I can't do anything. I'm going to try disconnecting.
I can hear my fan going. It was all right on the last session, wasn't it? It kind of seems to have got a bit more...
It does seem worse.
Challenge.
I'm going to force quit mine. I think it was very unhappy. Is yours freed up now?
I don't know. No, it's still waiting for those characters to come through, and it's got a beach ball over it. I'm going to kill it. I mean, it is complicated to
It happened right as I was
process a
changing
few
my follow you
characters.
settings. And so I wonder if we hit a race condition somewhere.
Yeah, we've oscillated with the new contributors ensemble. We've oscillated between JetBrains and VS Code, and they've both got weaknesses.
There's another tool called Tuple, which I've not yet tried. But...
So Tuple's great for pairing, but it is limited to pairing. It doesn't work for mobs.
Yeah.
They've got something very like deep in their assumptions that means it's optimized for peer-to-peer, but doesn't work very well across groups.
Interesting. Although with mobs, I think using something like mob.sh and just screen sharing is fairly reasonable.
Yeah, I believe it should be possible for all of us to touch the same code base but be able to wander around it and have our own viewpoints and then come together and look at the same thing if we need to. Like, it doesn't seem like it should be that hard. But we've had instances with the VS Code one where the driver is looking at the code and it looks fine to them, and what the rest of us can see and what I can see on my machine is something else. Like the files have got out of sync with each other, and then you just end up having to kind of kick things and reboot them.
Doesn't do that, at least.
I don't think I've noticed it. I've never noticed it do that. No.
Yeah.
It's more.
So tell me when you have it up again. I think I'll need a new sharing link.
I've just pasted it in to the chat.
Got it.
So I was doing a thing here. Users have always made a commit since every date. So I was going to paste that in. I'm going to change this to an async function. And I'm going to change that to be has committed since.
I need you to approve me.
Oh, I don't see the thing come up. It hasn't asked for my approval on any windows that I can see.
Let me try
Once again, VS Code usability, IntelliJ usability people. You should be watching this. All right, here we go. So, Con, what's the password?
7160.
You pass.
All right. For you JetBrains folks watching this, the reason it probably failed that time is because I already had it open from a previous window, and I don't think it gave me the new connection string. So that's what I'm thinking.
Sometimes it's a curse to be able to even think about how these things might work under the hood. You know what I find? Okay, how do we like that test?
I don't love it because I don't think we want the answer to be truthy. I think we want it to be literally true. So
I'm not sure if you can. I guess I can say equal to true.
Yeah, that's what I would do.
Okay. So let's run the test. Whoa. Okay, so it's trying to do something via the repos property of the rest, which we do not have. So as well as teams, we need repos, and that needs to have a list for org function. I've got another one. So that's going to return a response that has data. So this is where we almost want to start adhering to the types, but let's try not doing for a bit, shall we?
Yeah.
So it's going to return, I guess it ought to really return a promise of something with some data.
Let me, if you're okay with me stepping in for a moment,
Yeah.
I think at this point, what we're going to want to do is stop returning bare objects and return um, a new null response.
Okay, you're down the bottom.
And null response is going to be, it's going to have a data property which has a map function.
Well, data is just an array. It's always an array in this API.
Oh, it is. Okay.
And
is there anything else that we're using with response? Okay, so no, I think in this case then, so list for orgs returns a response. The response has a data. So yeah, I'm going to have
it's going to return a list of
data that returns an empty array.
Yeah. And then that's going to work for now until we want to actually return a real one. If you look at the function that was stubbing, the thing that each of those things in the array should have a name, because then we're going to call Octokit again to ask it for the commits for that for the repo with that name.
Oh, so that gives us all of our 26 repos.
Yeah, so there's like two calls, and then
so it's not really a null response. It is a null
list of
repo list. And
then there's going to be a null commit list.
Yeah. Well, we don't need that yet because we're not going to return any repos. We're just saying no repos. So that should work, I think.
Yeah.
Did not, though.
Was false. Well.
Oh, right, because we have to have at least one repo.
Yeah, because if they haven't committed, if there are no repos, then they haven't committed. So we could say, we could change the test and say it's always false.
No, I mean, what this does is this forces us to go through and like make our stub. And the more complicated the third-party API is, the more complicated the stub. But even so, once we get it down, it's not going to be that bad.
Okay.
So the repo list is going to be return a array with one null repo in it. And that null repo is going to need to have a, you still following me?
Yeah.
That null repo is going to have the ability to list commits.
Well, so it's just got a name, and then we're going to go back to Octokit and ask it for the commits for the thing with that name. So a null repo is just a thing with a name that's a string. So you could do get name return.
Yeah, repo, we're never actually doing anything with it at all, are we?
What we do with it is, if you look at line 24, we're mapping over the list of repos.
Oh, there it is.
We are asking it for its name.
Okay, so
this data type, this payload that GitHub gives us back, has got all sorts of other properties of the repo, but the only thing we're interested in is its name.
Yeah. So I think maybe I will do this all in line to make it a little more clear. So we're going to return a null. No, I think I'm just trying to think of what the simplest way to do this is. Getting the data will give us a list of repos. We only really care about one repo. And that repo has a name. And that name is our null Octokit repo. Right?
Yep.
Now, if I run this again, it should now fail on line
list commits. Yeah, list commits. You gonna run it?
List commits is not a function. Okay, I'm going to turn it back over to you then.
Okay. So now I will look inside repos, and what's it called? List commits. then, well, we could return an empty array there, but then we won't get a pass. So I guess we do a new null
commit list.
Come on. And that needs a comma. Let's put one there. Where did it make it? It made it up there. Let's put it at the bottom. And what does that have to look like?
That gives us a result which has a data and a len.
So the data just has to have something in it. So we do get data, return an array with something in it.
And I'm always really clear, null commit date, because these will show up in your tests, and when they do, you want when you're debugging while your test isn't working, you want to be able to look at the data
and let's not call that a date, because that is just a null commit. That will be a complete object representing the details of the commit, who it was by, what date it was on, what the commit message was, what the SHA was, and all that stuff. But we don't care that it's actually an object. It's just a.
Got it. Yeah, and one thing I want you to notice, and particularly the people watching this notice, is that when we're building this stub, we're doing it driven by the implementation of our code. So when you first contacted me, Matt, you said, I'm running into a problem with OctoKit because it's got this broad interface and I have to implement the whole thing.
Yeah.
And the secret is, no, you don't. We only implement exactly the bare minimum needed to make your actual production code work in a null way.
Yes, I mean, there's still a lot more here than in the example you had in your workshop, right, where we basically got down to just stubbing out HTTP get and post, I think.
Yeah,
and that was kind of where I hit a wall of confidence, was like, should I really be doing this much work? Is this okay?
It's a bit ugly, I admit. It's, as these things go, it's all trade-offs. Is this more or less ugly than doing the fake versus, it's this versus a fake versus a mock versus an auto mock? Which of these things has the least amount of ugliness? And that's a decision I think that everybody has to make for themselves.
Well, we need to get to the point where this is finished and working, and then we've got two things to compare with, because so far my jury is out.
Yeah. So our tests are passing, correct?
They are, such as the tests that we have. Yes.
Right. I've always made a commit since every date, and now that we've built it all the way through, I think if we're thinking about null behavior, sort of the default null behavior, I think it makes more sense for the answer to be no, they've never made a commit. So we'll just change this to false.
Yeah, either way, this if you think about the behavior of the system, the steady state would be, yes, they have made a commit recently, because we're only going to intervene if they haven't made a commit recently. I don't know whether it really makes a lot of difference.
Yeah, I do tend to think of each class kind of as its isolated thing.
Yeah.
In terms of what does it make, if I only think about this thing without worrying about who's calling it, what does it make sense to do? But I think it's a fairly arbitrary decision.
Yeah.
So which would you prefer in this case?
It's fine. Let's leave it like this. But are we going to now add another one for simulating that they have made a commit? Then we're going to play with that
eventually. But first we have to finish doing an else.
No. Yeah, I suppose the other reason I'm uncomfortable with switching it over is we've just driven through a load of code that would be loose of tests again if we switch it over to this, right?
Well, part of the reason I wanted to do this is show you that now that we've established the infrastructure, it's not going to be so bad. So right now it's failing, but I can make it pass by just saying that the null commit list is empty. I believe that will now pass. So we've set up, we've stubbed out all the stuff that we care about So now we have the ability to sort of manipulate it, and it's not as bad now that we've done that setup.
Yeah.
So the remaining one to do is get members of. And I think what I would say is that by default, the teams have no members.
Yeah.
And I think I would say by default, teams have no members. By default, users have never made a commit. And then I'll turn that back over to you again.
Okay. Oh. Don't know whether there's like a special empty matcher, but we can just say it's equal to an empty array, right?
I think so.
What am I missing? Expected one argument, but got two. No,
you're missing a parenthesis here. Oops. Here. And you're missing an async here.
Thank you. Yeah, it's amazing how the sort of unfamiliarity with the editor gets in the way of basic fluency like that. Right. So when we run this, what's going to happen? It's going to make a real call to GitHub.
It's
going to try and make a real call to GitHub and then hit that it doesn't know how to do.
It's going to be octokit.rest.teams.list members in org. Yeah.
Read properties of undefined reading data, so that thing is supposed to always return a null members list. Come on.
There's something going on with WebStorm this time because it seems like the connection is just really slow. I wonder if their servers if we're connecting through their servers and they're overloaded or something.
What, are you seeing a lag in me typing and it coming through to your end?
Yeah, and also when I'm typing, everything just seems a little bit laggy.
It's okay right now. It's okay. So now it's passing because we've got a null members list.
Okay, good. So now we've established sort of the base. So you said at the start that we had two things to do here. One was to create a make this nullable, which we've done, and the second one is to be able to sort of seed it with some test data, and that's what we have left to do. So,
and I think we've discovered another thing, which is to
that?
sort out the type checking.
Yes, but I think we should make it all the way through to the end of the behavior we want, and then we can
absolutely
with type checking.
Yeah. And
I think what we're going to
might want to have a fiddle around solo with that because it's
in other statically typed languages, sometimes what you have to do is, because you don't want to implement the whole API, you don't want to do like null interface, null implementation. It makes it really ugly. So sometimes what I'll do is I'll make a new interface that just represents the part, the interface that I'm using.
Yeah.
And then
we can say that the octokit.rest thing is one of those rather than the broad type. Exactly. Yeah, I sort of had when I tried doing this on the plane home, I got about as far as we have here, and that was what I started to think I was going to have to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I started to think about how what I was doing here was like, rather than building my own, that port type, the GitHub client type, and spending time implementing a fake on that. What I was doing was I was spending time implementing a fake on GitHub's type instead. And I lost confidence in the value of doing that, because it's like I'm now having to get to know their ugly API that I don't control and didn't choose. But that's what this is about, because you've got that confidence, so you can pull me over to the other side of the hill, and then we can see what things are like over there.
Well, the thing is in order to implement OctokitGithub, you do have to know what their ugly API is.
Yeah.
And in our stub, all we have to do is stub out just the part that we have to learn to make the real code work.
Yeah.
And that may be the difference, is we're not trying to learn the whole API and the whole breadth of it, but just the part that we're using.
Yeah.
Now, before we continue, there was a little polite fiction that we could do this null octokit, but I actually think we need to say null octokit and have that have a REST getter that returns all of that. And up here, we'll say new null octokit. And I think that was a pure refactoring that should just work.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the reason I did that is because now we're talking about having the null octokit maintain some state. Because what we want to do is say the null instance allows team members to be configured.
Yeah.
And the way we're going to do that is we'll say GitHub client equals OctokitGithub, GitHub, create null. And then I tend to do this with optional parameters, which looks like this. I'm going to say team members, and because we're not doing a fake here, it's a pure stub, so we're not going to worry about what parameter is passed in here. We're just going to say that when you're asked for team members, you're going to return a thing. And I usually do that as a list, so that it will return this the first time, and that the second time, and that the third time. So this is going to be a list.
Okay. So it's not going to be a mapping of this team, these values, or anything like that. This is
it's just the return value.
Yeah.
Yeah. So team members right now, it is the user login. What is that? Like
it's just username? Literally a string that's your username. Like.
Yeah. And but it is returning. Yeah, it's returning an array. So so we're going to say user 1, user 2, and then I'm going to say that if it's called again, we get user 3, user 4. Okay. And it's complaining probably because it doesn't like that parameter, right?
Yeah, because we don't have a constructor parameter, I guess, and that's TypeScript whinging.
Yeah, that's okay. So this is going to take an optional list of team members which is going to be default to be an empty array. And that team members is going to be, let's see, default to a string array. Can you fix the TypeScript stuff?
I'm not sure. We're deep in all of these defaults and stuff. What's it? Initializer provides no value for this binding element, and the binding element has no default value. Let's just go back to what you had before. So you had team members.
It should be team members equals.
So we're trying to have. Don't we want to have a default of team members as an empty array?
That's implied by having team members default to an empty array here.
But why have we got another default for this thing as an empty object? Is that okay? Are we going to be able to
It is.
cope
What
with it
that does
being...
is says we don't have to pass in any options at all.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it
So if we
seems
don't
happy
pass in
now.
any options, it creates an object with all the defaults in it.
It
We don't
seems
pass
happy
in
now.
team members. It creates team members parameter.
So what do we do with that?
Oh, that does work, doesn't it? Okay. So now we're going to pass that. Actually, we'll call that options.
Okay.
And I'm just going to, we'll pass that through to our create null.
Which doesn't have a...
And then
Can I add that as a constructor parameter then? Yeah. Right.
And then that, can we just say private read only?
Well, you've destructed it into team members right away, though, so you could do... Do you want to just want to keep the team members, or do you want to keep the options altogether as a thing? Exactly. And then you need to declare team members up above. So do in the sort of fieldsy bit. Yeah, there you go.
Let's do this way then.
And why don't declare that as a capital O options, and let's type this bit because it'll make life simpler, I think. And then let's say,
well, let's just do it as any for now.
Yeah, okay. I just thought that might be where you could express that thing you were trying to express in there about the defaults.
I think we will
stuff.
do that, but I want to just get it working first. If that's all right.
Yep.
So now that we've got options, now when we say list members in org, we're going to say options dot team members. Let's see, that is list members in org. Yeah. So options dot team members. Then the null team members list is going to have constructor private read only team members. Make that any for now. And again, there may be a better way of doing this once we've got it sort of sorted.
Yep.
And then this will return team members.
Right.
And what we're missing right now is we've lost our defaults.
This dot team members.
Yeah. Yeah, we've lost our defaults.
Yeah. And that needs to be this dot options here as well.
Yeah.
Come on, you can figure it out. It's there.
I think we need our options, so I'm just going to do it this way. We need our default, so I'm going to do it this way for now.
Okay. Still not happy. Oh, you need to declare that field.
And let's see, I do that right this way, correct?
Yeah. I can't, it won't let me hover over the list members in org implicitly as a return type any because it doesn't have a return type annotation as referenced directly. What do you mean it has a null members list? Okay, so we don't know what team members is, so we don't know what the return type of this one is.
Got it.
And
no members list.
Oh, so this is weird here because we're using a funny inline object. Property team members does not exist on type add or update membership for user. I'm surprised about that scoping of this. Do you see that?
I see it, but I don't understand it.
Well, I think it's saying that, I almost wonder if that's just the IDE getting confused. it believes that this is going to be the scope of this little bare object here that we've defined, the value of teams.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure that's true.
I'm not sure it's true either. Let's try running the test, see what happens.
Right, so there's some places where we've called options. We've called create null without an options. So you were going to do a default for that. What happened to that?
Well, it got moved down into.
Yeah, but should we do it up here in the create null call?
Yeah, let's do options equals. Wow.
So you just have to do it the other way around. So you have to say what type it is and then do the equals afterwards. So you do options any equals, yeah.
So we'll default it to provide a default there, and then down here we'll destructure it and provide defaults again. We're going to have to do all kinds of stuff with our type checking. But once we have the pattern figured out, I don't think it'll be a problem.
Yeah, I think it's coming a bit clearer to me already. So property team members does not exist on type. All right, so it really does think that. Even TypeScript thinks that. I'm really surprised about that. So, well, look, a quick thing to do would be to do this. Can I just drive for a sec?
Please. Yeah. Just do that. I love it. Oh, is it passing?
Yeah.
Yay. Okay, good. So now we are allowing the team members to be configured, but we're not actually declaring anything about it. So here in our test, what I want to do is say that assert that await GitHub client dot get members of irrelevant team. I love using this phrase, irrelevant this or that. I do it in my
I always say
some
team, like, or any team. Yeah.
We're going to expect that that's going to be equal to user 1, user 2. And that might even work. I think we might have sort of jumped ahead and coded that.
Why doesn't that compile?
I don't know either.
Oh, because it's just a bit of you need trying to fix it. I will fix it. There.
Oh, did I lose it?
Yeah, I think we have accidentally ended up with that behavior, haven't we? Oh, we need async.
I got it. Okay, are you running it?
I ran it, but it was too late. It missed you adding the async, so I'll run it again. Still doesn't think it can see the async. Where's that?
Line 133.
Maybe we didn't save. Let's try again.
There's definitely an async on that line.
There we go.
There we go.
Okay, so it's got an array of undefineds.
We're passing in team members. Right.
Is it something to do with the sequence of calls? That, like, we've got an array of 2 things in here, and then actually what we did was we just assumed that the value of this team members thing was the user 1, user 2. Do you know what I mean?
It's because it's mapping to login.
Ah, right. So to stub it out, we would need to map over the team members. Can I try and do this?
Yeah, please do.
So here we would
get just stop working.
Team members dot map, and that's going to give me a username, which I'm going to map to a thing. What did you say? It was login.
Yeah.
don't you like that? Okay, it's a string, isn't it? And now I have to put brackets on it. So if we'd have said what type team members was, it wouldn't have needed us to fuss about this. Okay, and what do you think of that now? Expression statement is not assignment or call. So in order to return an object, I need to put more parentheses around it. There we go. Okay, yeah. So that's now back to what I was thinking it was. So we've got we need to sort of do this thing where it pulls the first response off the queue and returns that.
Right.
How does that work?
Right
where
here.
Do you do that? Right here. Where are you?
Here. We're gonna shift it off like that.
Sweet. Right. So what's it saying?
It is saying
copies of undefined reading map. GitHub 119. So
I think it's because we're shifting. The default here needs to be an array
of arrays. Yeah, well done. God, you're sharp. Readers, I can barely keep up with him.
Well,
I hope you're keeping up.
There's sort of a pattern that emerges after you've done this a few times.
Yeah.
So I'm afraid I can't claim any special brilliance here. But yeah, so now we've got that one, and then if we read it again, we should get user 3 and user 4.
Yeah.
And in fact, I'm going to say this: configured across multiple calls. And doing that may be overkill. We might not end up needing it, but I thought it'd be easier to preemptively put that ability in case we did, because it's actually not that much more work.
Yeah, well, I can see how it would be. Definitely my instinct was to go, and I suppose it's that sort of like mocky thinking. It was to pass an object that said, if you call it with this team, give this result. If you call it with this other team, give this result.
Yeah, that's the fake thinking, but we're not doing fakes or anything even remotely like a fake. We're just stubbing.
Yeah. And we're sort of, we're more like, provided. It's like, did you ever use that library VCR in Ruby where it like recorded HTTP interactions and then you could play them back in your test? It's like that. We're like making a tape of the payloads, or the little bit of the payload that we care about, and then we're just going, here's the sequence of payloads to give back.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And it turns out, I mean, that feels like it's very dodgy, right? But it turns out in your tests, because you know exactly what your setup is and what your response is, what you're testing, it works out. But I would say that this piece of the whole nullable infrastructure set of patterns, this is the part that I'm least happy with. And I'm waiting for somebody smarter than me to come up with a better way of doing it. But everything everybody's come up with is just sort of gone back to either creating a fake, which turns out being writing more and more complicated code and having the same problems that fakes do, or creating a mock where you're injecting something that's not actually running, which again, now you're not doing sociable tests, you're not running real code. So when the behavior drifts, your tests continue to pass.
Yeah.
So we're almost done here.
This is going to be good enough for now, I think. What are we missing?
We're almost done with setting up our nullability. What we're missing is it allows commit dates to be configured and differently across multiple calls. So we basically are making this configurable.
Yeah.
And
But in order to do that, there's two layers, right? Because this one, is this the one that does a loop where it first checks that there is a repo, because it has to go across all of the repos?
Yeah, but I don't think that matters, because if you follow me for a moment,
Yeah.
if you recall, when we turned this from false to true, all we did was had to change the commit list to have something inside of it.
Yeah.
So
we just want a commit list.
Yeah.
Or even simpler than that.
Well, before you jump ahead, let's just get the test down and get the interface that we want in place.
Okay, so let me type. So this time it's going to be true. Oh, it's hung again.
Let's give it a moment to...
Full sync with JShaw. Maybe it's that infinite loop of doom that I was talking about earlier.
Yeah, are you
You're following me, following you, following me, following you, following me.
Is yours currently set up to follow me?
I can see on the screen it says full sync with JShaw stop on the screen. So
there we go. It is. It's infinite madness. We're gonna have to kill it again.
No, it's come back. It's come back.
Oh, has it?
Yeah, and now it says that you are following me and I'm no longer following you. So mine's back.
Mine's not back, but hopefully it will come back soon.
So what did I say? So it's going to be equal to true.
Oh, mine's back.
Right.
I think. Mine's not back. Now it's back. Yeah. Except you need to set up your create null with the options.
Yeah. So here I would pass, instead of passing team members, I would pass commits. And then I guess let's do 2 or even 3. So it can go true, false, true.
Mm-hmm.
So the commits is going to be...
No, we don't want to pass. We don't care about the commits because we're only answering the question, has committed since. So I wouldn't say commits, but committed since. And then we just want to pass in true,
literally
false,
pass
true.
in true, false, true.
Yeah.
So this is something I was wondering about here, because like doing true, false, true is sort of stubbing our API rather than stubbing their API, because in this method we massively simplify the information that GitHub has available about the repositories and the commits that have been made in the repositories down to a Boolean flag, because that's all we care about.
That's right. Yeah.
But we're stubbing, in the other bits, we've been sort of more drawn towards stubbing at their side of things.
The interface for both the OctokitGithub methods and the Nullable OctokitGithub is at the same level. Now typically when you're doing a test double, what you'll do is you'll pass in like a fake OctoKit, or a fake stub or a stubbed OctoKit, and you'll be thinking about the dependencies level of abstraction. But what we're doing in OctokitGithub is we are completely abstracting OctoKit away to the point that once we are done here, we can stop passing OctoKit in and actually create it ourselves in our constructor.
Yeah.
So what we want to do here is just say that our commits are going to be true, false, true, because that is the level of abstraction we're operating at here.
Okay.
We want the create null. We want to be at the same level of abstraction across all of this. We want to really think about how
because we're going to translate from this stubbing protocol here into GitHub's protocol when we create the actual null commits list.
That is the entire responsibility of OctoKit GitHub, is to be a translator from our high-level API.
So then can we change that to
GitHub.
say, so it should be repo has commits or something, or?
Well, the
that what
actual
this
thing
means?
is has committed since. So I would say committed since or something like that. If we're in Ruby, I put a question mark at the end.
Yeah. Well, okay. We can
Or
come
how
back
about
to this.
has committed?
We can come back to this name, because the thing, the method that we're going to call, that we're going to be stubbing, is list commits with a. Do you see here? Are you following me?
Not at the moment, but yeah, I am now.
So they happen to give you a where clause basically on your commits query.
Right, but
so
that's the wrong abstraction level for. If you look at the test, the abstraction level of the method call on line 137 needs to be the same as the abstraction level of the setup on line 135.
Right, and then we translate that lower down.
Then we translate.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we don't need to worry about the implementation. We're only thinking about what the callers see in our test.
Yeah.
And what behavior the callers expect.
Let's run that.
So I expect this to fail. We're going to get false instead of true.
Yep.
On line 138? Or 130?
Oh,
on line 137.
And it's because we're ignoring this option anywhere. So I suppose we need to start by emulating what we did with team members and doing another. What did we call it? Has
committed, I think.
Which is going to be a array of bools. And where does that sit in this? Is that
be comma there? Yeah.
I don't know how many M's and T's in these.
2 M's, 2 T's.
Terrible at double letters. So that's going to be a. Oh, is it a string of it's an array of booleans, right?
Not in this case. It was.
Because it's only because we were returning an array before, but now we're just a return. So same thing. It's an array of booleans, and we'll make it be an empty array by default. What do you not like about that? What?
Well, let's not put in the type information for now. Let's just have it be equal to that. And take out the colon. Again, I think we'll be better off dividing and conquering on this, get it to work, and then we'll get the typing to pass.
So then I'm going to... Property has committed is used before being assigned. Where is it used?
So I'm going to turn this back to any as well.
This. Okay.
Yeah, that'll do it.
So now we need that in the null commit list. Right?
Yep. Yeah, so list commits, line 101.
And I guess I need to do the same thing here to sort of.
Yeah, I wonder what's up with that. That's weird.
Yeah. And then can I just no? So I need to do the shift thing there as well.
Yeah.
And then we need a constructor. So it returns an array with the boolean in it?
No. No. Can I drive for a second?
It returns, if there's something in, if the boolean is true, it returns an array with something in it. Otherwise, it returns an empty array.
That's right. And what it returns is just null commit, or null commit is what I would write.
Let's be consistent.
Yes. I think that will work, except line 102 is giving us an error of some sort.
It's probably because I'm trying to use Boolean and it's fighting us, so let's just go to any for everything. Yay!
All right, nice. And I believe that's the complete implementation of the nullable infrastructure wrapper, other than the typing, which we still need to fix.
Yeah, I think for Cucumber tests purposes, we might need a way to set these null stubs like after the constructor time.
Mm-hmm.
So we might need a way to mutate the GitHub client or something.
And that's really not a problem. I prefer immutable objects whenever possible, so I tend to do all my setup in the constructor. And there also sort of becomes kind of this ugliness of, are we going to add a set nullables? What you would do in that case is, rather than saying create null, you would have a method called make nullable, or make null, or set null, and you create it and then you set it to nullable, or I don't know, something like that.
Well, we can play with it. I think that the answer might be to leave the construction of the actual OctokitGithub object, the null OctokitGithub object in the Cucumber test till the very last minute. And what we more mutate and build up is the options.
Yeah.
And allow those to be, they just can be immutable value objects that you can call to create copies of them that change shape. And then at the last minute, we construct that's kind of what I can see. But there's going to be a bit of fiddling to make that happen.
Yeah, yeah. So it's been about an hour and a half. Do we want to stop here and resume in a part 3?
Yeah, I need to stop. My kids are home from school, and also I hadn't realised how much this is frying my brain. I've struggled to keep up with you this afternoon. There's a lot to take in here for my little brain.
Yeah. And I apologize. I'm so used to it. I've been doing this for years. I've sort of gotten over that hump, and I understand how it all works now. So
whereas
I'm
this, taking it all in and thinking about the implications.
Yeah.
I would like a bit of time to play solo with the type, so we're not fumbling around, because I think you're right that what we need to do is, they call it narrowing in TypeScript. So name just the small parts of that big ugly instance of GitHub thing, and just name the instance type of GitHub, and just name the pieces of it that we care about all the way down. And I'm interested. I'd like to have a play with that solo, so I sort of can guide us a little bit through that.
Yeah, I would love that. I'm looking forward to seeing. As I mentioned, I don't do a lot of TypeScript in my own projects, so it's not something I feel like I know really well. I really value static typing. I value typing in general. But what I've done in my code is I've written a dynamic type checker, which I just put in my code. And that's kind of the best of both worlds, in that my tests fail right away when I make a type mistake because it throws an exception. But I don't have to muck around with making the compiler happy as we are now.
Yeah. There's definitely instances with TypeScript where it's quite frustrating. Generally, when you're dealing with other people's stuff, the thing I really like about the typing is just being able to model model everything, give everything a name, and then so you're not using primitives. It's just as easy to say that something is a. And we're not doing it very well in this code base yet, actually. So there's a lot of primitives around that represent things like usernames and.
Well, I think you have to think in types, even if the language doesn't support types. You have to think in types. You have to be really clear about what types are in your system in order to have a large-scale system that actually works well. When I started working with Ruby, that was something that I tried to do a significant thing, D&D thing, because of course, and it sort of fell apart because I started losing track of what types were where because I had no annotations whatsoever, and no type checking either. So when I started working with JavaScript, I was like, I'm going to put type checking in here, even though at that point there was no tools that supported it.
Yeah, and there's so many like React's got some, or had, I don't know how well supported it is now, but React had some funny sort of runtime type checking stuff that they'd added in. I think Angular had something like that as well. People were yearning for it. Yeah, so I'd like a bit of time to play with that solo, I think, so I don't waste our time discovering it, unless you want to.
No, I don't want. I would like to do it together, but it'd be nice if you had the answers going into that. Exactly. Because it's also for the people watching. It's just not fun to watch people thrash. Yeah.
So how about let's stop the stream. But next time, what are we going to do next time? Well, next time we're going to
sort out the same bat time, same bat channel. Well, actually different bat time, but same bat channel. We've got the nullable infrastructure in place now. So all we have left, if we've coded it right, and I hope we have, all we have left to do is to now start to use it in your tests. And I think the tests that matter here are your scenarios, because you don't have any tests over retired active contributors other than the scenarios. Yeah. So we need to modify the Cucumber steps to create a null, to use create null, build up those options appropriately according to the scenario, and then have it go.
And then we can destroy fake GitHub.
Yeah. Then we can destroy fake GitHub.
Squish it all together into one just GitHub client that you can create a null of.
And what we might also be able to do, if you look at line 16 of OctokitGithub, right now we're passing in an OctoKit, but that is an implementation detail. And I would love to not have to do that. Just we create an OctokitGithub, and it just works with everything we need.
So you mean it would create its own instance inside of this thing?
Exactly.
In the right, or so it wouldn't be creating an instance in here though. It'd be creating it in the factory method.
We'd make a static create that created either.
And then the type that this thing would depend on would not be GitHub's big ugly instance type of GitHub. It would be our narrowed. These are the bits of that type that I care about.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know if we want to do that before we do the scenarios or after we do the scenarios, but I see that as another way of simplifying this.
I want to do it, so I'm gonna see how hard it is to do, because I feel like the types could already be helping us a bit with not just the coding, but sort of like expressing what we're trying to express as well, being able to just describe things a bit. But I'd like to see.
So next time, types and maybe scenarios, depending on how long that takes.
Yeah.
All right. So let's stop the video.
Let's stop the video.